The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I knew before opening it that Barbara Henderson had struck again. I stood in my driveway on the outskirts of Grand Island, Nebraska, holding the envelope like it might bite me. My name, Samuel Foster, was typed in those official-looking letters that the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association loved to use when they wanted to intimidate someone. The sun was already hot at 8 in the morning, promising another scorching July day, and I had 3 grain elevators waiting for me to clean their bin sweep augers before harvest season kicked into full gear. Inside the envelope was a violation notice. Apparently, my bin sweep auger cleaning equipment violated Section 12.4 of the HOA covenant regarding commercial equipment storage on residential property. They were giving me 14 days to remove the equipment or face daily fines of $200. I read the notice 3 times, my blood pressure rising with each pass. The equipment in question was a specialized vacuum system mounted on a trailer, along with my pressure washer setup and containment system. It sat behind my house, barely visible from the street and certainly not bothering anyone. I had lived in this neighborhood for 6 years, running my grain elevator equipment cleaning business the entire time, and suddenly it was a problem. My phone rang. It was Dale from the Farmers Cooperative Elevator. "Sam, we need you out here by Thursday at the latest. Got to get those augers cleaned before the wheat harvest starts rolling in. You still good for that?" "Yeah, Dale, I will be there. Same rate as always." "Good man. You know you are the only one in the county certified to do this work properly. The state ag department does not mess around with cross-contamination issues anymore. Since that whole fumigation chemical incident 3 years ago down in Clay County, they have been strict as hell." I looked at the letter in my hand. "Dale, let me ask you something. How many certified bin sweep auger cleaners are there in Hall County?" "Just you, far as I know." "Why?" "Just confirming something. I will see you Thursday." After hanging up, I went inside and pulled out my certification documents. The state of Nebraska Department of Agriculture had strict requirements for anyone cleaning grain handling equipment. You needed training in proper chemical handling, cross-contamination prevention, OSHA safety protocols, and specific certification for working with fumigation residues. The course took 3 weeks and cost $4,000. I was the only person in Hall County who had bothered to get certified because most people did not realize there was even money in this kind of specialized work. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting, which according to the schedule posted on their website was that Thursday evening. That gave me 2 days to prepare. Wednesday afternoon, I drove to my lawyer's office in downtown Grand Island. Robert Patterson had handled my business incorporation and various permits over the years. He was a practical man in his 50s who had grown up on a farm and understood agricultural businesses. "Sam, come in. What brings you by?" I handed him the HOA letter. He read it slowly, his eyebrows rising. "They are citing commercial equipment storage." "Do you actually store commercial equipment on your property?" "My bin sweep auger cleaning equipment. It is on a trailer behind my house. Been there for 6 years. And they are just now complaining about it, apparently. But here is the thing, Robert. I am the only certified grain elevator equipment cleaner in the county. The co-op, Landmark Feeds, and even the big commercial elevators out by the interstate all use my services. Harvest season starts in 2 weeks. If I cannot operate my business, those elevators cannot legally operate without risking massive fines from the state ag department. Robert leaned back in his chair. That is an interesting situation. The HOA covenant cannot prevent you from operating a legal, licensed business, especially if that business does not create a nuisance. Are you generating noise, traffic, or other disturbances? No. I leave early in the morning, come back in the evening. The equipment just sits there when I am not using it. It does not make noise, does not smell, does not leak anything. It is just a trailer with specialized cleaning equipment on it. You have clients who can attest to your services being essential. Every grain elevator in the county. Robert smiled. Then I think we have a strong case if it comes to that. But let us see what happens at the HOA meeting first. Go in there, present your facts calmly, and see if you can resolve this without legal action. Document everything, though. Take photos of your equipment setup. Get written statements from your clients about the certification requirements, and bring copies of your state licenses. Thursday morning, I was at the Farmers Cooperative Elevator by 6. The facility sprawled across 5 acres on the south side of Grand Island, with towering grain bins reflecting the early sunlight. Dale met me at the office. "Sam, thanks for getting here early. We have got grain coming in next week and I need these augers spotless. Show me what you have got." We walked through the facility. Bin sweep augers are the mechanical systems that sweep grain from the floor of storage bins toward collection points. They operate in dirty, dusty environments and accumulate residues from grain, fumigation chemicals, and sometimes mold or contamination. If not properly cleaned between different grain types or seasons, they can cause serious cross-contamination issues. I need all 6 bins cleaned. The state inspector is coming Monday. No problem. I will have them done by Saturday evening. Dale handed me the access keys and safety equipment. "You know, Barbara Henderson called me yesterday." I stopped. "What did she want?" "Asked me if your services were really necessary. Said something about you operating an illegal business out of a residential neighborhood." I told her that not only are your services necessary, they are legally required. Without proper cleaning by a certified technician, we cannot operate. Period. What did she say to that? Got real quiet, then said she would be in touch. "Sam, what is going on?" I explained the HOA situation. Dale shook his head. "That is ridiculous. Your business affects the entire agricultural economy in this area. Every elevator depends on you. If we cannot get our equipment cleaned properly, we cannot accept grain. If we cannot accept grain, farmers cannot sell their crops. This is not some minor inconvenience. Can you put that in writing for me?" "Absolutely. I will have something drafted by this afternoon." I spent Thursday and Friday working on the cooperative's equipment. The process was methodical and could not be rushed. Each auger system had to be carefully disassembled, vacuumed with my specialized equipment to collect all residues and fumigation chemical traces, pressure washed with specific cleaning solutions, inspected for damage or wear, and then reassembled. The collected residues had to be properly contained and disposed of according to EPA and State Agriculture Department regulations. My equipment was not some off-the-shelf pressure washer. The vacuum system was specifically designed to handle fumigation chemical residues without releasing them into the air. The containment system ensured nothing hazardous leaked into the soil or groundwater. The entire setup cost me nearly $40,000 when I started the business, and maintaining my certification required annual training and inspections. By Friday afternoon, Dale had written a detailed letter explaining my business's importance to the local agricultural industry. He also made phone calls to other elevator operators. By the time I left the co-op on Saturday evening, I had 5 letters from different grain elevator operators, all stating that my services were essential and that I was the only certified provider in Hall County. The HOA meeting was held in the community center at 7 on Thursday evening. I had spent the previous days collecting documentation and preparing my presentation. I brought my certification documents, the letters from grain elevator operators, copies of state regulations regarding equipment cleaning, and photos showing my equipment setup was neat, contained, and unobtrusive. I arrived 15 minutes early. The community center was a modest building near the neighborhood entrance, with a meeting room that could hold about 50 people. Barbara Henderson was already there, arranging papers at the front table. She was exactly what you would picture when someone says, HOA president. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair with deliberate highlights, expensive casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment, and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. "Mr. Foster," she said when she noticed me, "I am glad you decided to attend." "Mrs. Henderson, I would like to discuss the violation notice." "That is on the agenda. Please take a seat." Other board members filtered in. There were 5 total. Barbara as president, 2 other women around her age named Patricia and Linda, and 2 men who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. About a dozen other residents showed up, probably for various other issues. Barbara called the meeting to order at exactly 7. They went through standard business, approving last month's minutes, discussing landscaping contracts, debating pool rules. I waited, my folder of documents on my lap. Finally, 45 minutes in, Barbara said, "Next item. Violation notice issued to Samuel Foster at 2847 Meadowbrook Lane regarding commercial equipment storage." Everyone turned to look at me. "Mr. Foster is operating a commercial business from his residential property, storing large commercial equipment in violation of our covenant section 12.4. The equipment is unsightly and not appropriate for our residential community." I raised my hand. "May I respond?" Barbara looked annoyed but nodded. "Please keep it brief." I stood and walked to the front, opening my folder. "I want to address several points. First, regarding whether my equipment is unsightly." I passed around photos. "As you can see, the equipment is behind my house, barely visible from the street. It is a trailer with cleaning equipment, kept neat and maintained. It does not leak, make noise, or create any disturbance." Patricia, one of the board members, looked at the photos. "I drive past your house regularly. I never even noticed this was there until Barbara pointed it out." Barbara shot her a sharp look. I continued. "Second, regarding the nature of my business. I am a certified grain elevator equipment cleaner, specifically specializing in bin sweep auger systems." I passed around copies of my state certifications. The state of Nebraska requires specific certification for this work due to the handling of fumigation chemicals and cross-contamination prevention. This certification requires 3 weeks of training and costs $4,000. "That is all very interesting, Mr. Foster, but it does not change the fact that you are running a business from a residential property," Barbara said. "Actually, it does, because I am the only certified provider in Hall County." I distributed the letters from the grain elevator operators. "Every major grain facility in this county depends on my services. Without proper equipment cleaning, they cannot legally operate. Harvest season starts next week. If I cannot provide my services because the HOA prevents me from storing my equipment, every grain elevator in the area will have to shut down or face massive state fines." The room got quiet. One of the male board members, whose name tag read Tom, was reading through the letters. "Barbara, did you know about this? About him being the only certified person who can do this work. The specifics of his business are not relevant to the covenant violation," Barbara said, her voice tight. I think they are pretty relevant, Tom said. If his business affects the entire agricultural economy of the county, we cannot just shut him down because you do not like looking at a trailer. I never said I did not like it. The covenant is clear. I spoke up again. Mrs. Henderson actually called one of my clients, Dale from the Farmers Cooperative, asking if my services were necessary. He told her they were legally required. That was 3 days ago. Several people looked at Barbara, who had gone slightly red. I was attempting to verify the information provided in your business description, she said stiffly, by trying to discredit my business to my clients. That is not what I was doing. Tom stood up. I move that we table this violation notice pending further investigation. If Mr. Foster's business is as essential as these letters indicate, we need to determine if the covenant actually applies to equipment necessary for a licensed critical service. Second, Patricia said immediately. Barbara looked furious but had to follow procedure. All in favor. 4 hands went up. Only Barbara abstained. The motion passes. Mr. Foster, the violation notice is suspended pending review. We will revisit this at next month's meeting. I gathered my papers. Thank you for your time. Barbara did not look at me as I left. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The following Monday, I got a call from the City Code Enforcement Office. Someone had filed a complaint about me operating a business without a proper commercial license and storing hazardous materials in a residential area. The inspector, a tired-looking man named Jeff Morrison, came out Tuesday afternoon. I showed him everything: my business license, my state certifications, my EPA hazardous material handling permits, my equipment specifications, and my storage procedures. Mr. Foster, everything here looks completely in order, Jeff said, making notes on his tablet. Your equipment meets all safety standards. Your storage is appropriate, and you have every license and permit you need. Whoever filed this complaint either did not understand what they were looking at or was deliberately trying to cause trouble. Can you tell me who filed it? The complaint was anonymous, but it came through an HOA complaint form. We get those sometimes when neighbors are feuding. He handed me a copy of his inspection report. Keep this. If they try to push back, show them this official city clearance. You are completely legal. That evening, my phone rang. It was Richard Warren, the general manager of Landmark Feeds, one of the largest grain operations in central Nebraska. Sam, I heard you might be having some trouble with your HOA. Word traveled fast in the agricultural community. It is under control for now, Richard. What can I do for you? I need to schedule our annual deep clean for next week. But I also wanted you to know that if you need support dealing with the HOA, you have got it. Your work is not just important, it is critical infrastructure. Without you, grain handling in this entire region becomes problematic. I appreciate that. Let me get my schedule. I pulled up my calendar. I can start at your facility on Monday, the 28th. Perfect. And Sam, seriously, let me know if you need anything. I know people at the State Ag Department, county commissioners, the works. What you do matters. Over the next week, I received similar calls from 4 other facilities. Word had spread about the HOA issue, and the agricultural community was circling the wagons. I appreciated the support, but I hoped it would not be necessary. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for August 14th. In the meantime, harvest season began in earnest. I worked 12-hour days, moving between different facilities, cleaning equipment, inspecting for damage, ensuring everything met state standards. The work was physically demanding and technically precise, but I loved it. There was something satisfying about being really good at a specialized job that actually mattered. On August 10th, I received another certified letter from the HOA. This one was thicker. Inside was a revised violation notice, along with a new interpretation of the covenant that Barbara and the board had apparently drafted. According to this new document, any equipment used for commercial purposes qualified as commercial equipment, regardless of where it was stored or how it was used. They were now demanding I remove the equipment within 7 days or face daily fines of $500. They had also added charges for operating a business that generates excessive vehicle traffic and storing materials that could be considered hazardous to the community. I read through the document carefully. The claims about traffic were ridiculous. I left my house each morning and returned each evening, just like anyone else going to work. The hazardous materials claim was equally baseless, since my equipment was specifically designed to contain hazardous materials safely, and I had all the proper permits. But what really caught my attention was the timeline. 7 days would expire right in the middle of harvest season, when I had facilities scheduled back to back. If I was hit with $500 daily fines, it would quickly become financially devastating. I called Robert Patterson immediately. "Sam, they are overreaching," he said after I read him the new notice. "This interpretation of the covenant is extremely broad and likely unenforceable, but fighting it will take time." "How much time?" "If we file an injunction, maybe 2 weeks to get a hearing. In the meantime, those fines would accumulate. So I am looking at $7,000 minimum before we even get to court, potentially, unless you remove the equipment temporarily." "I cannot. I have facilities depending on me every single day right now. Some of this equipment weighs 2,000 pounds. I cannot just move it to a storage unit every night." Robert was quiet for a moment. "Let me make some calls. The county might have some interest in this situation given the agricultural impact. Give me until tomorrow." That evening I sat in my backyard, looking at my equipment. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. I had worked hard to build this business, to get certified, to establish relationships with clients who depended on me. The idea that one person with a petty grudge could destroy all that was infuriating. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dale at the co-op. "Heard about the new HOA letter. We are behind you 100%. Let us know what you need." Then another from Richard at Landmark. "Talking to county commissioners tomorrow. This is bigger than an HOA dispute." And another from Mike at Heartland Grain. "State Ag Department rep is in town Thursday. Mentioned your situation to him. He wants to talk." The agricultural community was mobilizing, and I was not sure if that made me feel better or more nervous about how big this was becoming. Wednesday morning, Robert called. "Sam, I spoke with County Commissioner Williams. He is very interested in your case. Apparently, the commissioners have been concerned about HOA overreach issues for a while, and your situation highlights a problem they have been wanting to address." "What kind of problem?" "HOAs interfering with legitimate businesses that serve essential county functions. There was a case last year where an HOA tried to prevent a home health care nurse from parking her vehicle at her house because it had a company logo. The county wants to establish some precedents about what HOAs can and cannot regulate when it comes to licensed professionals and essential services." "So what does that mean for me?" "It means you will have some powerful allies if this goes to court, but I have a better idea. I am drafting a response to the HOA that outlines why their interpretation is legally questionable and points out the potential county-level consequences of interfering with agricultural operations. Sometimes a strongly worded letter from an attorney is enough to make people reconsider. And if it is not enough, then we file for an injunction and take them to court, But let us try the diplomatic approach first. Thursday, I met with James Morton from the Nebraska Department of Agriculture at a coffee shop in Grand Island. He was a serious man in his 40s who oversaw equipment standards and certification for the Central Region. Mr. Foster, I have been hearing about your HOA situation through several of our licensed facilities, he started. I wanted to meet with you personally because this has implications beyond your individual circumstances. How so? Your certification and services are part of our agricultural safety infrastructure. When we implemented the strict cleaning and certification requirements 3 years ago after the Clay County incident, we did so knowing that it would create a specialized professional niche. We expected more people to get certified, but honestly, the time and cost barriers are significant. In Hall County, you are it. He pulled out a tablet and showed me a map. We have identified 17 critical grain handling facilities in this county that require certified cleaning services. All of them rely on you. If an HOA action prevents you from operating, we have a county-wide compliance crisis. Can the state do anything about the HOA? Not directly. HOAs are private organizations. But we can make it very clear that your services are essential to state agricultural operations, and that interfering with those services has far-reaching consequences. I am drafting a letter to that effect that you can present at your next HOA meeting. Everyone is being incredibly supportive. I appreciate it, but I am starting to feel like this simple dispute is turning into something much bigger. James looked at me seriously. Mr. Foster, it is bigger. Agriculture is not just a business in Nebraska, it is the foundation of our economy and our communities. When someone threatens that foundation, even unintentionally, it becomes everyone's concern. Barbara Henderson probably thought she was just enforcing neighborhood rules. She does not understand that she is interfering with critical infrastructure. That was Thursday, August 14th, the night of the HOA meeting. I prepared carefully, assembling updated documentation, the city code enforcement clearance, letters from additional grain facilities, the letter from the State Agriculture Department, and Robert Patterson's legal response to the revised violation notice. Robert came with me this time. Just in case things get heated, he explained. The meeting room was more crowded than last time. Word had spread, and several of my clients had shown up. Dale from the co-op, Richard from Landmark, Mike from Heartland Grain, and surprisingly, County Commissioner Williams himself. Barbara Henderson looked shocked when she saw the crowd. "This is a routine HOA meeting, not a public forum," she said nervously. "These residents have the right to attend and speak during public comment periods," Commissioner Williams said calmly. "I checked your bylaws." The meeting started with standard business, but the tension was palpable. Barbara kept glancing at the crowd of agriculture industry people sitting in the back rows. Finally, we reached the relevant agenda item. Barbara cleared her throat. Continued discussion of covenant violation at 2847 Meadowbrook Lane. Mr. Foster has failed to remove commercial equipment as directed. Robert stood. "If I may, I am Robert Patterson, attorney for Mr. Foster. We have significant concerns about the HOA's interpretation of the covenant and its application in this case." "The covenant is clear," Barbara insisted. "Actually, it is not. Section 12.4 prohibits commercial equipment storage that creates a nuisance or diminishes property values. Mr. Foster's equipment creates no nuisance, as confirmed by city code enforcement." Robert handed out copies of Jeff Morrison's inspection report. "Furthermore, his business is not a general commercial operation but a state-certified essential service provider." Dale stood up. I am Dale Jennings from Farmers Cooperative Elevator. Without Sam's services, our facility cannot legally operate. We are talking about millions of dollars in grain transactions and hundreds of farm families who depend on us to buy their crops. This is not a minor issue. Richard stood. Richard Warren, Landmark Feeds. Same situation. Sam Foster is not just some guy running a business from home. He is critical infrastructure for Hall County agriculture. Commissioner Williams stood. Barbara, I want to make sure you understand the scope of what you are dealing with here. The county has a significant interest in ensuring agricultural operations can continue without disruption. If the HOA's actions prevent Mr. Foster from operating, it creates a county-wide crisis affecting our largest economic sector. Barbara looked overwhelmed and angry. This is about maintaining property values and neighborhood standards. We cannot just let anyone store whatever they want on residential property. Mr. Foster is not anyone, Robert said. He is a state-licensed professional providing services that are legally mandated. The State Agriculture Department has sent a letter confirming this. He distributed copies of James Morton's letter. Patricia, the board member who had been skeptical at the last meeting, spoke up. Barbara, I think we need to reconsider our position here. This has gotten way beyond a simple covenant enforcement issue. The covenant is the covenant, Barbara said stubbornly. If we make exceptions for him, everyone will want exceptions. That is a slippery slope fallacy, Robert countered. Each situation must be evaluated on its merits. Mr. Foster's situation is unique because of his specialized certification and the essential nature of his services. Tom, the other board member who had supported me before, said, I move that we permanently dismiss the violation notice against Mr. Foster and amend our interpretation of Section 12.4 to allow necessary equipment for state-licensed essential services, provided such equipment does not create an actual nuisance. Second, Patricia said. Barbara looked panicked. We cannot just change our interpretation. That requires a full board review and community input. Then I move we suspend any enforcement action pending that review, Tom said. Second, Patricia said again. All in favor? Tom looked around. 4 hands went up. Barbara sat rigidly, not voting. Motion passes. Mr. Foster, you are clear to continue operations pending final policy revision. I felt a wave of relief. Thank you. Barbara stood abruptly. This meeting is adjourned. She gathered her papers and walked out quickly. After the meeting, several people came up to thank me or offer support. Commissioner Williams pulled me aside. Mr. Foster, I want you to know the county is watching this situation. If the HOA tries to resurrect these violations, we will step in more formally. What you do matters to this community, and we are not going to let petty bureaucracy shut you down. I appreciate that, sir. Also, between you and me, Barbara Henderson has been on our radar for other issues. She tried to prevent a county road maintenance crew from accessing an easement through the neighborhood last year because she did not like the equipment they were using. She seems to have a pattern of overstepping her authority. That was interesting information, but I just nodded. I wanted this whole situation to be over. For about a week, it seemed like it was. I went back to work, handling the rush of harvest season cleaning jobs. The grain was coming in heavy, and every facility was running at capacity. My days started at 5 in the morning and often did not end until 8 at night. Then, on August 22nd, I came home to find a bright orange sticker on my front door. It was a notice of covenant enforcement action with an effective date and a list of alleged violations. According to the notice, I was being fined $500 per day, starting immediately, for continued violation of HOA covenants despite board directive. I called Robert immediately. They are ignoring their own board vote. Robert sounded angry, which was unusual for him. This is Barbara acting alone. The board voted to suspend enforcement. She does not have the authority to issue fines unilaterally. I am calling an emergency board meeting and filing for an injunction tomorrow morning. Robert, I do not have time for this. I have 3 facilities that need service in the next 4 days. One of them is a major commercial operation that handles grain for half the county. I know. Let me handle the legal side. You keep working. But document everything. Every hour you work, every facility you service, every time you interact with the HOA. We might need it. The emergency board meeting happened on August 25th. I was at a facility in Cairo, about 30 miles away, cleaning a complicated Auger system when Robert called with an update. Sam, you need to hear this. Barbara Henderson admitted to issuing the fines without board approval. Tom and Patricia demanded her resignation. She refused, and then things got very heated. What happened? She claimed she has the authority as president to enforce covenants regardless of board votes. Tom pointed out that is not how the bylaws work. Then Barbara said something very interesting. She said she knows the neighborhood would deteriorate if people like you were allowed to run businesses from their homes, and she was not going to let that happen even if the board was too cowardly to back her up. People like me, her words. It got worse from there. She implied that you were only in the neighborhood because of some kind of agricultural welfare program, and that real professionals do not work with grain elevators. I felt my jaw tighten. That is complete nonsense. I bought my house with money from selling my previous business. I am not on any kind of assistance. I know. But it shows her mindset. Anyway, the board voted 4-1 to rescind the fines and issue a formal censure against Barbara for exceeding her authority. They also voted to begin the process of removing her as president. Can they do that? According to the bylaws, yes, but it requires a special election and a majority vote of all homeowners, not just the board. That takes time to organize. How much time? Minimum 30 days. The bylaws require written notice to all homeowners, a stated cause, and a formal vote. And in the meantime, Barbara remains president but with limited authority. The board has essentially stripped her of enforcement powers. If she tries anything else, they can seek emergency removal, but that requires going to court. I finished the job in Cairo and drove back to Grand Island, arriving home around 8 p.m. My equipment trailer sat behind my house, exactly where it always was, bothering nobody. I could not understand why Barbara Henderson had such a problem with it. The next morning, I found my truck tires slashed, all 4 of them. I called the police immediately. Officer David Chen arrived within 20 minutes and took a report. You have any idea who might have done this, Mr. Foster? I explained the HOA situation. Officer Chen took notes carefully. Has there been any direct contact between you and Mrs. Henderson outside of official HOA meetings? No. Everything has been through formal channels or at meetings. Has she made any threats? Not directly. But according to my lawyer, she has been hostile at board meetings. I will file this report. Do you have security cameras? No. You might want to consider installing some. If this is related to your HOA dispute, it might not be the last incident. He handed me the report number. Your insurance should cover the tires. If anything else happens, call immediately. The tire replacement cost me $800 and an entire day of work. I had to reschedule a cleaning job at a facility in Donovan, which was not happy about the delay but understood when I explained what happened. That evening, I installed 3 security cameras covering my driveway, equipment, and front door. The system saved footage to the cloud automatically. For 3 days, nothing happened. I went back to work, catching up on the delayed schedule. Then, on August 30th, my cameras caught something interesting. At 2 in the morning, a car pulled up to my house and parked across the street. After about 5 minutes, a figure got out and walked toward my equipment trailer. The person was wearing dark clothes and a hood, but the camera's night vision caught a clear image as they approached. They did not do anything, just looked at the equipment for several minutes, walking around it. Then they took out a phone and appeared to take pictures. After about 10 minutes, they got back in the car and left. I could not identify the person, but I got a partial license plate. MLN something, with the last digits obscured by dirt or deliberate smudging. I sent the footage to Officer Chen. He called back later that day. "Mr. Foster, we ran the partial plate. Only 3 cars in the area match that pattern. One belongs to Barbara Henderson. Can you question her based on this?" "Not officially. She did not do anything illegal in the video. Taking pictures from a public street is not a crime, but it is concerning given the context. Keep your cameras running and let me know if anything else happens." That night, at 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed on my phone before answering. It was a woman I did not recognize, probably in her 40s, looking nervous. I opened the door. "Can I help you, Mr. Foster? I am Nancy Pritchard. I live 3 streets over. I need to talk to you about Barbara Henderson." I invited her in. Nancy sat on my couch, wringing her hands. "I am on the HOA Architectural Review Committee. Barbara has been pressuring me to find violations at your property. She wants me to report things like your lawn height, paint colors, anything that could justify additional fines." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it is wrong. I reviewed your property yesterday. There are no violations. Your house is well maintained, your yard is neat, everything is fine. But Barbara is not going to stop. She has become obsessed with forcing you out of the neighborhood." "Did she say why?" Nancy hesitated. "She said you do not fit the neighborhood's image, that your business is blue-collar work and this is a professional community. I told her you are a certified professional and your work is actually quite specialized, but she does not care. She has this vision of what the neighborhood should be and you do not fit it. That sounds like discrimination." "It is, and I am not comfortable being part of it. I wanted you to know what is happening behind the scenes so you can protect yourself." Nancy stood. "I probably should not have come here, but it felt important. I appreciate you telling me. Would you be willing to put this in writing?" She looked scared. "Barbara would make my life hell. You do not have to decide now, but if this escalates, your testimony might be important." After Nancy left, I called Robert and explained the conversation. He was very interested. "Sam, this is getting into discrimination territory, which is much more serious than a simple covenant dispute. If Barbara is targeting you because she views your profession as beneath the neighborhood standards, that is a legal problem for her and the HOA. What should I do?" "Document everything. Keep copies of all communications. If Barbara or anyone acting on her behalf contacts you, record it if you are legally allowed to do so. Nebraska is a one-party consent state, so you can record conversations you are part of without telling the other person. And seriously consider whether you want to move from defense to offense." "What does that mean?" "Sue the HOA for harassment and discrimination. We have grounds now." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to just do my work and be left alone, but another part was tired of being harassed and wanted to fight back. "Let me think about it over the weekend," I told Robert. Saturday morning, I was in my garage organizing supplies when a police car pulled up. Officer Chen got out along with another officer I did not recognize. "Mr. Foster, we need to talk to you about an incident last night." My stomach dropped. "What incident?" Someone spray-painted graffiti on the HOA community center. The cameras show a truck matching your vehicle description in the area around the time it happened. I was home all night. Check my security cameras. We will need to do that. Do you mind if we look at your truck? Go ahead. The officers examined my truck carefully, looking at the tires, checking for paint residue. After about 15 minutes, Officer Chen came back. Your truck is clean, and honestly, the tread pattern does not match what we found at the scene. Plus, the timestamp on your security footage shows your truck in your driveway all night. Someone filed a report claiming they saw your truck at the scene, but it looks like false information. Who filed the report? Officer Chen exchanged looks with his partner. It was called in anonymously, but the call originated from a cell phone registered to Barbara Henderson. She is framing me. We cannot prove that based on a phone number alone. The caller did not identify themselves. But yes, it is suspicious. I am documenting all of this. If there is a pattern of false reports, we can take action for filing false police reports. After the officers left, I was furious. Barbara Henderson was not just trying to find me or force me out now. She was trying to get me arrested. I called Robert immediately and told him everything. That is it. We are suing. I will draft a complaint for harassment, discrimination, and abuse of process. We are also filing a restraining order against Barbara Henderson personally. Will that work? It will send a message that we are done playing games. And Sam, I think we need to involve the State Attorney General's office. Why? Because this has expanded beyond a personal dispute. Barbara is interfering with essential agricultural services through harassment of a state-certified provider. That is a matter of public interest. The AG might want to file their own action to protect state agricultural operations. Things moved quickly after that. On September 3rd, Robert filed a civil lawsuit against Barbara Henderson personally and the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA. The complaint alleged harassment, discrimination based on professional class, abuse of legal process, and intentional interference with business operations. We also filed for a temporary restraining order against Barbara, requesting that she be prohibited from contacting me, coming near my property, or taking any enforcement actions against me in her capacity as HOA president. The court hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for September 10th, but events overtook us before we got there. On September 8th, I was working at the Landmark Feeds facility when Richard Warren came running out to where I was cleaning an Auger system. Sam, you need to see this. He showed me his phone. Barbara Henderson had posted a long rant on the neighborhood Facebook page claiming I was running an illegal business that stored dangerous chemicals, and that she had been trying to protect the community from contamination risks. She also claimed I had threatened her and slashed my own tires to frame her. The post was completely unhinged and full of lies, but what caught my attention was the comments. Dozens of neighbors were defending me, pointing out that my business was licensed and legal, that I had been nothing but a good neighbor, and that Barbara had been acting irrationally. Several people also pointed out that their property values had actually increased since I moved in, because the neighborhood had become known as a place where professionals in agricultural services lived, which was desirable in a rural Nebraska community. One comment was from Tom, the board member. Barbara, you need to stop this. The board has voted multiple times to leave Sam alone. You are embarrassing yourself and exposing the HOA to legal liability. Please step down before this gets worse. Barbara's response was to double down, claiming the entire board had been corrupted by agricultural special interests. That evening, she showed up at my house. I was in my backyard when the doorbell rang. My security camera showed Barbara Henderson standing on my front porch. I grabbed my phone, made sure it was recording, and went to the door. "Mrs. Henderson, I have been advised not to speak to you directly. I need you to understand something," she said, her voice shaking. "This neighborhood was pristine before you came here with your working-class business. You are destroying everything we built." "I am not destroying anything. I keep my property neat. I do not cause any problems. You are bringing down the neighborhood with your blue-collar equipment and your dirty grain work. People like you belong in the industrial district, not in a residential community." I kept my voice calm. "Mrs. Henderson, I am recording this conversation, which is legal in Nebraska. You are on my property making discriminatory statements. I need you to leave." "I am not going anywhere until you agree to move out." "That is not happening. Please leave or I am calling the police." "You think you can intimidate me? I have lawyers too. I will bury you in legal fees until you cannot afford to fight anymore." I had heard enough. I called the police non-emergency number while she was still on my porch. "I need an officer at 2847 Meadowbrook Lane. The subject of a pending restraining order is on my property refusing to leave." Barbara's eyes widened. "You called the police on me. You are trespassing and refusing to leave when asked." She finally backed down, walking quickly to her car. She drove away just as a police car came around the corner. Officer Chen had responded. I showed him the security footage and the recording on my phone. "Mr. Foster, this supports your restraining order request. I am filing a report for trespassing and harassment. The prosecutor will decide whether to file charges, but this documentation will help your civil case significantly." The restraining order hearing on September 10th was brief. The judge reviewed the evidence. The documented HOA harassment, the tire slashing, the false police report, Nancy Pritchard's written statement about Barbara's discriminatory motives, and the recording of Barbara at my house. "Mr. Foster, I am granting a temporary restraining order prohibiting Mrs. Henderson from contacting you or coming within 100 yards of your property. This order is effective for 1 year, subject to renewal." "Mrs. Henderson, do you understand these terms?" Barbara stood stiffly. "Your Honor, I was only trying to protect my neighborhood from inappropriate commercial activities." "Mrs. Henderson, from the evidence presented, Mr. Foster's activities are completely legal and licensed by the state. Your actions have crossed the line into harassment. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." With the restraining order in place, Barbara Henderson could no longer take any direct action against me, but the civil lawsuit was still pending and the HOA itself was still a party to that suit. On September 15th, I received a call from Patricia, the board member who had been supportive throughout the dispute. "Sam, the board met last night. We voted unanimously to settle your lawsuit. We are offering to formally rescind all violations, pay your legal fees, and amend the covenant to explicitly allow necessary equipment for state-licensed professionals. We are also removing Barbara as president and pursuing formal removal from the board." "What made you decide to settle?" "Honestly, our lawyer told us we would lose badly if this went to trial. Barbara's actions exposed us to significant liability, and we do not want to spend tens of thousands in legal fees defending something that was wrong from the start. Most of the board members wanted to end this months ago. Barbara bulldozed us. What about Barbara? Is she facing any consequences? The HOA attorney is recommending we sue her personally for exceeding her authority and causing financial damage to the association. That is still under discussion. I talked to Robert about the settlement offer. He reviewed the terms and recommended accepting it. Sam, this is a good outcome. You get everything you wanted. No fines, no restrictions, explicit protection for your business, and your legal fees paid. Taking this to trial would cost time and money with uncertain additional benefits. On September 22nd, I signed the settlement agreement. The HOA formally withdrew all violations, paid $3,500 in legal fees to Robert, and amended their covenant to include an exception for equipment necessary to state-licensed essential services, provided such equipment was maintained in safe and reasonably neat condition. But the story was not quite over. In early October, Barbara Henderson was arrested. It turned out she had been embezzling HOA funds for nearly 2 years, using her position as president to hide irregular payments to herself disguised as contractor fees. The total amount was over $40,000. The investigation started when the new HOA treasurer, appointed after Barbara's removal, noticed the irregularities and reported them to the police. Financial records showed Barbara had been writing checks to a company she owned, claiming it was for landscaping and maintenance services that were never actually performed. Officer Chen called to tell me about the arrest. I thought you would want to know. Given everything she put you through, this explains a lot. She was probably targeting you to distract from her own criminal activity. Will there be a trial? The district attorney is building a case. With the financial records, it looks pretty solid. She is facing multiple counts of theft and fraud. Barbara Henderson pleaded guilty in December to avoid trial. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered restitution of the full amount stolen. She would serve at least 2 years before being eligible for parole. By the time the legal proceedings ended, it was nearly Christmas. Harvest season had ended weeks earlier, and I was in the slower winter period for my business. I used the time to expand, buying additional equipment and getting certified for additional types of grain handling system maintenance. The agricultural community had not forgotten my situation. I received several contracts from facilities that had heard about the dispute and respected how I had handled it. My business actually grew because of the publicity. In January, the Nebraska Farm Bureau featured my story in their newsletter, highlighting the importance of specialized agricultural services and how HOAs needed to understand the difference between nuisance businesses and essential services. The article prompted several other states to examine their HOA regulations regarding agricultural professionals. One day in late January, I was driving home from a job when I passed the community center. There was a new sign in front: Meadowbrook Estates, HOA now under new management. Tom had been elected the new president, and he had promised a more reasonable approach to covenant enforcement. I pulled into my driveway that evening, parking next to my equipment trailer. The setting sun reflected off the stainless steel cleaning tanks, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I had built something good here, something that mattered. When someone tried to tear it down out of prejudice and spite, the community had stood up for what was right. That was what I loved most about working in agriculture in Nebraska. People understood the value of hard work and specialized skills. They respected professionals who did their jobs well, whether that meant farming 1,000 acres or cleaning grain elevator equipment. My phone rang. It was Dale from the co-op. "Sam, got a question for you. We are looking at adding some new storage bins next year. Would you be able to handle the maintenance on them? It would be a significant increase in workload." How significant? Maybe 30% more work annually. I looked at my equipment, already planning what upgrades I would need. "I can handle it. Let me put together a proposal." After hanging up, I went inside and sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet, peaceful. Through the window, I could see my equipment trailer sitting exactly where it had been through all the chaos Barbara Henderson had tried to create. She had tried to destroy my business because she thought it did not fit her vision of what the neighborhood should be. She had harassed me, discriminated against me, even tried to frame me for crimes. And in the end, her own criminal behavior had brought her down while my business thrived. I thought about Nancy Pritchard, who had risked Barbara's wrath to warn me what was happening. I thought about Dale, Richard, Mike, and all the other people in the agricultural community who had stood up for me. I thought about Tom and Patricia on the HOA board who had done the right thing despite pressure. Good people doing the right thing. That was what had won in the end. The next morning I got up early as always, loaded my equipment, and headed out to a grain elevator in Alda. The sun was just coming up, painting the flat Nebraska landscape in shades of gold. The roads were clear, and the work ahead was familiar and satisfying. This was my life: early mornings, specialized work that mattered, and the respect of a community that understood the value of what I did. No petty HOA president with delusions of grandeur could take that away. As I pulled into the grain elevator facility, Dale was waiting for me at the gate. "Morning, Sam. Ready to get started." "Always am, Dale, always am." And that was the truth. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The HOA dispute was behind me, resolved in the best possible way. Justice had been served, both in civil court and criminal court. My business was stronger than ever, and I had gained valuable allies and friends through the ordeal. Life was good. The bin sweep augers needed cleaning, and I was the only certified person in the county who could do it right. That fact had saved my business and put a corrupt HOA president in prison where she belonged. I grabbed my equipment and got to work, doing what I loved in the community I called home. Sometimes standing your ground against bullies is hard, but when you have the law, your community, and simple justice on your side, right prevails. That is the Nebraska way. That is the American way. And that is exactly how it should be.